magic in theater. The plays we put on, we're trying to get the audience to believe that they're somewhere else, and it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of spirit from the actors and from the technicians to actually make the magic happen. And I believe that a certain amount of ourselves become part of the theater building itself.
The year 1926 saw the Grand Elsinore Theater open its door to the public for the first time. Since then, Salem has watched the building transform through many acts, and in the late 80s almost had its curtains fall for the last time. Concerned citizens of the city knew a treasure would be lost, and had rallied to save the theater and return it to its grandeur state. The Elsinore Theater has seen many celebrities, shows, and movies throughout the decades, and thousands have gone to the showplace of the Willamette Valley to be part of the culture, arts, and history that flows through the theater. Some of them love the arts so much, however, it is said that they never leave. Throughout the Gothic-themed lobby, Harcourt Hall, and auditorium accompanied with the eerie lighting along the walls of the theater, many have said to feel a spirit, something that enjoys the shows as much as the patrons, and something that lingers in the theater well after the show is over. The long history of the theater and devotion to the arts is a blend that attracts people and spirits alike.
Theater has a long history. It was built in 1926 by George Guthrie, and he thought that the Salem area and the Willamette Valley needed a showplace for all the arts, and he was a lover of the arts. He liked Shakespeare, he liked all the classics, and so he decided that was the theme he was going to use.
The fact that it was one of the very last and actually the only Tudor Gothic theater in Oregon, and it was actually designed. The lobby was designed after the Elsinore Castle in Denmark, and the stained glass windows depicted the play within a play.
So the theater opened in 1926. Actually opened as a silent film palace, and then became a vaudeville theater. And then it was a mixed use between between silent films and then also vaudeville. And then when talkies were invented, they added a couple years later in 1928 or 9, they added audio equipment so they could show the talkies. From that point on, it changed hands a couple times. Some of the major movie chains, Act One Theaters, and some of the other ones, it was sold to them. So it really was a commercial film house.
The Elsinore had been leased to such film companies as Fox, Warner Brothers, and Act 3 Theaters. Over the course of the 50 years, the abuse of time, nature, and the audience had proven to take their toll on the Grand Theater, and it found itself in poor condition. Sadly, the Elsinore had lost its appeal to many of the locals.
When the movie cineplexes were created and built, this became a second-run movie theater and kind of just went into disrepair. The community decided, well, they would tear it down and build a parking lot. And that's where some community citizens got involved and said, no, it's too great of treasure. So they rallied around. There were variations on bond issues, different ways of saving it. They finally came up with one in the late 80s and essentially restored it in the 90s and 2000s, kind of over 3 extended summers. The first extended summer, they did a lot of work that really the public did not see. The heating system, the dressing rooms, all the rigging on the stage floor was all changed out to modern standards. All the stained glass windows were rebuilt to the original specifications, and that kind of put everything back to the original grandeur. They cleaned the original tapestries along sides of the wall. They were jet black from the days you could smoke in a movie theater. Obviously, we don't smoke in movie theaters anymore, but actually the nicotine is what preserved the fabric.
After the painstaking renovations that took place over 3 summers, the Elsinore returned to its former majestic shape, but people question if the restoration had stirred the spirits who consider the Elsinore their home. There had been many reports of cold spots on stage, strange shadows, bizarre occurrences, and figures seen walking through objects. These spirits are said to be happiest when people are around who are associated with the theater life. There are many who believe that the entity that roams the building is George B. Guthrie himself, who still checks in on his glorious achievement.
Ghosts in a theater? Sure. There's always ghosts in a theater, they say. You know, it just all depends, on what you believe. But most theaters and a lot of historic buildings, they have a great history, so you never really know what's going to go on.
Several encounters of paranormal activity at the Elsinore Theater. In 1994, I became the technical director of the Elsinore Theater, which allowed me to wander through the halls there late at night, and usually by myself. There was one particular instance when I was actually locking up after a performance, and it was fairly late in the evening. That was the last one in the building, and the only light on in the auditorium was the ghost light that was on stage. I was walking across the upper balcony, checking the exterior doors, and I had a kind of a strange feeling that made me stop. So I stopped where I was and turned around, and I looked at the back wall, and there were 2 shadows on the wall. One of them was moving. I was not. The shadow walked through my shadow and into the booth and then disappeared. Kind of stood there for a few minutes, and I kind of had a chill feeling, but I was never afraid. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just go ahead and finish what I was doing. Walked over, checked the last door, and left, and didn't think too much about it after that. I do believe the shadow that walked into the booth was George Guthrie. Then on another occasion, we were rehearsing a play. I believe it was Pygmalion, and it was quite late at night, and there was 4 or 5 of us on stage, just getting ready to lock things up and getting ready to go. And then we could hear what sounded like rocks falling from the grid. So we became very quiet for a couple of minutes and listened, and there were rocks falling from the grid. So of course we hollered, hoping that there's maybe somebody up there had crawled up there and was just messing with us and throwing things down. And nobody answered, so I finally climbed up to the grid, which was 64 feet, straight up a ladder, straight up the wall, and got up to the grid, and there was no one there. And while I was up there, there were still rocks falling on the grid. We never did figure out what that was. On another occasion, we were rehearsing a play and happened to notice someone standing at the front of the stage. We used to get a lot of people coming in watching rehearsals, so we didn't think too much about that either, until it became time for this person to leave. And when he decided it was time to leave, he turned around and started walking out, which normally wouldn't have been a problem, but he wasn't using the aisles. He was walking through the seats, and kind of hazed up a little bit and disappeared about the 4th or 5th row. There were several staff members who did not believe in it, believe in any of the stories. They felt that we were just kind of tired and were seeing things, but there was other believers besides myself.